بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Good morning everyone. Today I will talk about the language and the social class. The main points of this chapter are: first, regional varieties and social varieties. Second, the concept of social stratification. Third, comparison between class and caste. Fourth, William Labov method. Fifth, the importance of social class information. In the first chapter, as my colleague Abdullah mentioned, that the author describes what will happen if two English people meet in a train for a first time, that they will start a conversation. The author mentioned two reasons for starting this kind of conversation, which are: first, establishing relationship, and second, for conveying information about the speaker. Our focus here is on the second. So it's clear that the language reflects the speaker society, and this is the first point that I mentioned here, which is the internal differentiation of human society is reflected in their language. Actually, there are two main things that affect on a language, which are regional varieties and social varieties. Regional varieties is usually related to geographical barriers such as mountains, rivers, seas, etc. Social varieties is related to social barriers and social distance, for example, social class, age, religion, etc. Let's do this exercise. I will give you a question from Standard Arabic, and I want from you to participate by giving example from social and regional varieties. The question is ماذا تريد? You can use mic or chatbot to participate. Let's start with the regional varieties.
داير شنو؟ هذا من جابر جاب لك اياها بعد. وش تبي؟ ماذا بك؟ Okay, go ahead, Abdullah. You had many. That's more enough.
Okay, as you can see, like وش تبغى, وش تبي, and also وش تبين, also أمرني الغالي. This is social variation. And like ما أنت ميت, شو بدك, عاوز إيه, داير شنو, ماذا ودك. It's regional variation, which is related to geographical distance. Actually, I have a PDF file that could explain the regional variation, and I hope it will be helpful. I take this PDF file from the internet. He defined the regional dialects as the caused by geographical barriers, national barriers, hills, rivers, can affect the dialects of group of people, cause varieties. Geographical space also create different dialects, dialects of distant places, different from each other. The writer said that there are three types of regional dialects: international varieties, intra-national or intra-continental varieties, cross-continental variation, dialect chains. International varieties, a good example of international varieties is British versus American. International varieties or intra-continental varieties, variation between words, maybe between people in different area of the country, like the example that you given previous about like Saudi Arabia question ماذا تريد or وش تبغى, and from Egypt عاوز ايه, or Sudan شنو داير, or between different countries of the region. Cross-continental variation, dialect chains, two or more different language or dialects merge one into other without a definable boundary. Example, across the whole of Europe, one chain links all the dialects of German Dutch, and Flemish from Switzerland through Austria and Germany to the Netherlands and Belgium. And there is another which links dialects of Portuguese, Spanish, Catalan, French, and Italian. I hope this PDF file was helpful. Okay, let's continue our presentation. Social stratification is a term used to refer to any hierarchical ordering of group within a society, especially in terms of power, wealth, and state. For example, traditional society in India is stratified into different castes. The main four castes are Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudra. If you want to know more about these castes, you can go back to this article, History of the Indian Caste System and its impact on Indian Today, written by Manalia Deshpande. In English-speaking world, there are social classes. However, there are big difference between caste and class. Caste dialects are easier to study by linguistics because castes are a stable, clearly named group, rigidly separated from each other. Social class are difficult to study by linguistics because social castes are more flexible. It is difficult or impossible to move from one caste to another. It is possible to move from one class to another. Because of the complexity in the social classes, linguistics study in this field focus on two ways. First, idealects, which means the speech of one person at one time in one style. Second, to concentrate on the speech of rural and particularly older uneducated people in some isolated village. Actually, dialectologists then began to investigate the speech of urban areas. However, urban studies presents a problem, which is how could a linguist describe the speech of a city consists of millions of population. William Labov developed some sociolinguistics methods, such as random sampling, which proved to be very significant for the study of social class dialects and accents. By following random sampling, Labov was able to claim that the speech of his informants truly representative of that of New York, which means that the variation of New York speech, for example, in pronunciation of R or not, in the word like car, not random. By using extra linguistic feature, like if a speaker were in a certain social class or age or sex, you can predict the use of one or other variation X% of times. By following Labov method, a survey made in Detroit, USA, about the use of suffix s in the third person present tense. For example, she knows. As you know, that s is appear in the standard English, and it's associated with the higher social group. It was suspected that there might be a direct relation between the use of S and social class. The results of the survey was as the following. Upper middle class use the verb without S 1%, lower middle class 10%, upper working class 57%, lower working class 71%. As you can see, there is a big gap between middle and working class. Middle class, they use just 1 or 10%, and working class use the verb without S 57 and 71%. This could divide a society into two main classes, which are middle and working class. This situation can be described into different ways. Dialect mixture, which means that two separate dialects are mixed in different proportions by the speakers of different classes. Inherent variability means that the variation is an integral part of the variety itself. According to dialect mixture view, the reason of the variety in the use of S because there is a mix between Detroit African English and Standard English. Inherent variability view is that variation takes place in a very wide scale, including large number of other linguistic features, even in the speech of children who have not been exposed to the other dialects. It appears that linguistic variety is an inherent variability. Okay, in the end of this chapter, the author asked this question, which is why we need, what is the value of this kind of information? And he mentioned 5 reasons for the importance of this kind of information. First, it shows exactly what sort of information we deal with. Second, it tells us something about the social structure of the particular community. Third, it helps to predict the average percent of using third form, for example, in each group. Fourth, it tells us a lot about social class. 5, it gives us a lot of information about the process involved in linguistic change. At the end of this presentation, I hope that the presentation was useful. I tried my best to make it short as it is possible and include all important points. And I hope that I didn't miss some. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Okay. Let me make some comments, if you don't mind, regarding this. First of all, let's ask the question, why sociolinguistics? How did this idea of going down into the field, طبعا these studies مثل ما قلت لكم احنا نتمنى حد منا يجد وقت when you go back to Ibn Khaldun, even Sibawayh talked about linguistic variation. But linguistic variations at the time of Sibawayh, he looked at it from a purely descriptive perspective, where even this is how he composed Arabic grammar at the beginning, okay? By looking at how Arabs speak their own language. He took the idea that this is the language. If you talk to an Arab, you say إيش المفعول, إيش الفاعل, إيش المرفوع, إيش المنصوب, they cannot respond to you. They have no idea about that. But they were brought to life speaking their language in this way, okay? Therefore, if you want to understand the language, you go to them and describe the way they pronounce the words, sentences, sounds, etc. How they combine words within a sentence, how they bring sentences within a discourse. وهذا اللي يتكلم عنه الجرجاني يسمى نظرية النظم, which is discourse, pure discourse analysis. Here, for a long time, many Western, وهذا يقول دائما احنا للأسف, there is a gulf between what we study, what they call it Western linguistics. طبعا يسمونها modern linguistics. It's not modern, it's Western linguistics, and Arab or Muslim linguistics. The Arab Muslim linguists have done great work. That is, most of it is hidden and requires people to go and dig into it, understand it, and it may even compete with the most advanced theories in our understanding of language nowadays. لكن للأسف فيه جحود. Anyway, for the idea that Labov and others came up with this issue of studying language with its social context, finding out about variations, many linguists do something you call it free variation. لما تقول للناس why they speak this way, you say your grammar this way, and you have another grammar. يعني طبعا, for example, like what you said in Abdullah, مثلا gave some examples of negation. مثلا, I ain't doing nothing. Okay, I ain't doing nothing. Sometimes double negation. I don't do nothing. Okay, I didn't do anything. Okay, this is the way we look at one of the different variations of fusing grammar, expressing a morphological feature, which is Allahumma salli ala Rasulillah, negation in English. You'll find many ways of making negation in English. If you ask an English grammarian for sometimes syntacticians, he say it's free variation. What do you mean by free variations? Later on, those sociolinguists said there is no such term of free variation. There is restricted variation or controlled variation by certain factors. It could be social, it could be regional, as we mentioned, there could be discourse, and there are many factors play a great role. There isn't anything which in language which is that we can call free variation. There is no free variation, okay, in language, and this is why they describe these variations based on the social use of language, or the use of language within a social context, with a regional context, with an dialect context, your own dialect, okay? But there are a number of issues that Abdullah referred to, and I'd like to really just allude on them and just talk about them, which is, first of all, when we look at variation here from a social perspective, it has to do with the group, with the community itself, okay? Within one place, like a city, like Abha, like New York, like Norwich, like Detroit, like anywhere in the world, okay? And what makes, first of all, sociolinguistics is very much related, because this is the sociology of language, sometimes they call it. People in sociology study how language affects society in one way or another, social fabric. We as linguists, we look at how the society really influences the use of language. So we look at language from different, this study from the same phenomena, but we look at it from different perspectives. And this is why people in sociology and people in sociolinguistics and linguistics benefit from each other, to the extent that we think when it comes to taking language into consideration, even anthropological linguistics, people in anthropology, they are very much intertwined. When we talk about, for example, why do we have social classes in Saudi Arabia? On what basis the social classes emerge in the United States, for example, or in England, or in France? Why they exist? What is the basis in which these social classes emerge? They didn't discuss it here, because Treadwell or other people wouldn't really, they take that for consideration, that they bring this. If you ask any American or any British or any French why these social classes exist, they will tell you why. Okay, why do they exist? On what basis? What makes you belong to a certain class or the other? Upper class, middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, lower upper class, etc. I don't know, discrimination is something else, that this causes discrimination, but as you mentioned, it's money, it's economics. These are capitalist societies. If you ask any American to which class you belong, he will tell you, because based on their income, how much money you get, it is which class that you belong to. That determines where you live, the lifestyle that you go through, the type of department stores that you buy from. You see, this is why Labov made a very interesting study of the post-vocalic R, pronunciation post-vocalic R in New York City, where he went to different department stores, McKay and Saks, and I forget the other one, okay? And he made his selection of these stores based on the type of income of people who come to these stores. Sometimes a coat, they found a woman coat, you will find it at Saks for $90. At McKay's with $38, I think this is, and I forget the other store, which is, you found it in $20. Probably the same coat. But because now you go to different department store with different etiquette, with different decoration, with the parking is there, somebody's welcoming you, things different, you see, it's different. احيانا تشتري من الحراج ب 5 ريال مثل عندنا، وتروح find a place وتحطها من الماركات الكذابة دي يقول لك تلقى ب 200 300 ريال صح ولا لا؟ طبعا عبد الله Amani says our society is moving into that direction. I agree with you Amani. I agree with you Batul. And this is طبعا because in some of our aspects of life we have become capitalists. رأسماليين. You see? This is the capitalist society is very clearly divided based on its own. طبعا what caused that ممكن تقول قالت الأخوان money, education, discrimination, influence, many factors, but the main factor is اركب. لا خلينا خديجة خلي شوية. الله يوفقك يا عبد الله. Okay. As Abdullah mentioned, Abdullah Chaudhry, of course, mentioned, and Labab has mentioned movability among the social dialects up and down. If you get more money, you'll get up. You see, if you lose money, زي العلاوات اللي شلوا علينا, you will you go down a little bit. So from upper class to lower class. You see, these some they're very flexible. Movability is very flexible among social dialects, and that affects you when you go with as they say, birds with feather fly together. It affects you. Okay, it affects the way you speak. Sometimes because you belong to a certain group, and affects. And these طبعا هذه ودنا نركز على جانب اخوات كرام اخوات كريمات ان linguistic variable معناته linguistic variable معناته linguistic variation like pronunciation. أعطيناك مثال pronunciation of the post-vocalic R. Okay, a syntactic one or a morphological one, the deletion of the third person S, like she study instead of she studies. Okay, in simple present. The negation and many factors. These are called, they are linguistic variables. Yeah, I'll give an example of it. Okay, these are called linguistic variables. When they give social meaning, when they are taken place because of social factors, it is called a sociolinguistic variable. Sociolinguistic variable mean a linguistic variable that has social meaning. واضح يا اخوان؟ Okay. No, there is variation takes place when the causes of variations are sociolinguistic variables. You speak differently, you pronounce a word differently, you use a grammatical structure differently. يقول شلونك شنو ما ادري. These are okay. This is a discourse. These are sociolinguistic variables. When somebody say وشلونك, you know where he's from. Okay, these are regional variables. When somebody says شنو داير, you know he's from different place. Okay, ماذا بك هنا يعني or something, you know where those people have come from. So they have social significance. طبعا these are regional. احنا في اللغة العربية أكثرها إيش, most of them are regional. But okay, اللهم صل على رسول الله. Is that clear? طبعا the causes of that identity, solidarity, we'll talk about that issues. Why people maintain these. Sometimes they know they use them, but they insist that and they continue to use them, and they are aware of other variables. And they may choose to use other variables, but sometimes they don't. But any linguistic variable, which is at the phonological level, morphological level, syntactic level, discord level, that has social influence, social meaning, social effect, is called a sociolinguistic variable. Okay. فواضح الفكرة دي, sociolinguistic variable. Then we, Abdullah, طبعا Labab and others talked about caste. And جزاه الله خير, Abdullah, he elaborated on what we mean by caste. لكن I'd like to really emphasize this more. Okay. لو جبت لنا عبد الله, جبت لنا الشريحة اللي فيها الكاست, جزاك الله خير. I'll be very thankful. A caste system, it's a social system, but it's not like the socio-economic, or they call it, they don't call it, sometimes they call it social class, but socio-economic, to differentiate it from other social systems, okay, which is caste. caste is a very rigid system. You cannot move from your caste. You live in your caste and you die in your caste. Okay? It is from the word caste. خلاص, you're encapsulated in it. You continue all life, no matter how much money you get. But that is very interesting about the caste system, which is very clear in India because of the Hindu religion. Okay, this is a social class, if you call it social, based on a religious background. In the Hindu society, people are not equal. It's part of the religion. طبعا الله عز وجل يقول الإسلام يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. In Hinduism, no, it's different. They have the upper class, which is the Brahman, then the Kshatriyas. The Brahman is called, they are called the head of God, or the people, the upper class, they call them avatars, people who have God incarnation. طبعا هم بالنسبة لهم like the Gandhi family and other, they're gods in the form of human beings. This is part of the system. We need to know this so understand how these societies work, okay? And how language is reflecting these major differences. Then they have the Kshatriyas, they are the arms of God. Those are people in the army, in high positions, whatever. Okay? Then they have the Vaisyas, they call it the belly of God. Those people who work in farms, do business, whatever. And they have the Sudras, okay? And they are the legs of God. Those are the lower parts and this does not change. Well, this is why there is a lot of rivalry, a lot of movement now in the Hindu society. Even most of the Hindu that become Muslims because of this principle of equality that exists in Islam. لا فرق بين عربي ولا عجمي. I'm telling you why, and that is reflected. I wrote about this long time ago. أتكلم مقال في الموضوع هذا. And Islam and modern linguistic ideologies. Okay, if you look at this, they don't only speak different dialects; they speak different languages. Although Abdullah could be from one caste, I am from one caste, the communication between us is irreciprocal. You know, irreciprocal means it's not changeable. It's speaking in language A, I respond to you in language B. Okay, although I understand your language, you understand my language. Sometimes the socio-linguistic variable comes to a different language sometimes within the caste system. And I just want to tell you how extreme it gets sometimes to deal with such issues. Another thing that Abdullah talked about, this is one of the research tools that Labov, because Labov looked at how people communicated, or how they communicate in New York City. And he realized that there is a feature. There is, they call the socio-linguistic variable, which is the pronunciation of right sound in post-vocalic position, like in car, in abroad, in these things. And he realized that people don't sometimes pronounce their R's. And he looked at, is there a variation? Because people, when you talk about anybody, we ask about in New York City, في أكثر من 25 مليون واحد. What is the most important, significant linguistic feature, socio-linguistic feature in New York City? Say people don't pronounce their R's. Wherever you go in New York, you find people saying, I park my car over there. You see? In reality, that's not true. Yes, and when he went into the field, and he wanted to see, does it really have a sort? If all people of New York does that, you see, that means it is a regional socio-linguistic variable. It's not a social one. Because the people of New York pronounce in this way, خلاص. The region of New York is that. But in reality, when he went into the field, he found differences, percentages, different percentages that exist among people. Anyway, some of the terms that are mentioned in the book, and Labov referred to them and other linguists as well, but he was the one, he found something called hypercorrection. You know, hypercorrection, you know, in a certain class, like in middle class, they found that people in middle class, they want to move, every class is aspiring to move up, okay, into the ladder of social mobility, okay? And they want to pretend that they belong to that class because they're aspiring to. he found, for example, the percentage is 38% of the time that people at Allahumma salli ala the middle class, and then lower middle class, they keep their R's. But he found out that people in middle class have 62% of the time keeping their R's, while the upper middle class has not reached that. طبعا تعدوا عليهم. هذه يعني عجيبة بالنسبة له. And we expected as you go to the classes that you keep your R's more, okay? But here those people are having more R's in their pronunciation than the ones in the upper class. He looked at it and he looked back at their pronunciation because they were counting the R's. We found out that they even pronounced their R's in places where they're not supposed to be pronounced. Like instead of saying idea, they say idea. They add something because idea sounds like as if you're dropping an R. So they put an R in a place which does not belong. This is called hypercorrection. Mean extensive use of a sociolinguistic variable in a context where it does not belong.